Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of the ByteTalk podcast. Today we have Cassidy Williams with us. We're so excited to have you, Cassidy. How are you?
Good. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for just coming and talking to us today, Cassidy. We're really excited to talk to you because I know you have been doing so much, and I'm super curious to understand how your brain works a little bit. But I just want to know, what are you up to? What technologies have you been using lately? I know you just moved, so how is life? What's going on?
Yeah, it's kind of chaotic right now in the household as we're trying to unpack all the boxes that are behind me right now and get all situated. But it's been a very busy and exciting time in this whole pandemic thing. Life now is incredibly different than it was a year and a half ago, where a year and a half ago I was living in Seattle. I was doing a bunch of hardware projects and doing a Kickstarter and teaching full-time and traveling a bunch. And now I am in a very different job in a completely different city, doing much more software and a lot less hardware stuff, and it's been fun. Very different but fun.
That's awesome. I know you love mechanical keyboards too. So
don't get me started.
Which one are you? Which one are you
How
using
much time
now?
do we have?
Right now, I am using a Rama Kara board. It's a solid aluminum board. The keycaps are ones that I designed, actually, DSS Tekla.
Oh, cool.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's so
and
cool.
It's what the best part of this move, I gotta say, is having access to all my keyboards again, because I moved to an apartment a year ago yesterday, and then to another apartment, from apartment in Seattle to apartment in Chicago, and then here. And this is the first time I've been able to type on this keyboard for over a year, and it's very exciting.
How many
That's
times
so
a day
cool.
do you switch your keyboards?
This is my fourth switch of the day, but to be fair, it's because I've been just like, ooh, I have this keyboard again, yay! And so it's more about that and less about just, I like to switch to keep me focused. Typically, I only use one a day, and then, depending on what I'm working on, I might switch to another one. I have a Plank keyboard, which is an ortholinear one, and that one is definitely more for typing emails than coding. I have ones with different function keys and different ways I've programmed it and stuff, but I could go all day on keyboards,
Wow.
so we might not want to stick on this topic for too long.
I tried to get into that world 2 years ago, and we started doing I think it's called GMK, but it's only the keycaps, right? Not the whole keyboard
it's
itself.
just keycaps.
And we started producing May 2019, and it's still producing. So it takes so long. It's crazy.
I was going to say, GMK keycaps, their timelines are so long, especially in the past couple of years, where I have one GMK set, or actually I have two GMK sets, but that's all. That's where I'm stopping.
How long? I'm curious about the Rama, because I talked to them, how long it took to arrive at your place after you designed it.
This particular keyboard, it was actually already made, and it was a gift from a company for doing some work for them. So I lucked out, because the timelines on the Ramas can be pretty long.
Oh, okay. Yep.
Wow.
Yeah.
Do you have any suggestions on... So I've never had a mechanical keyboard, and I've actually tried multiple times, okay, I'm going to, everyone in the office around me is clanking, sounds super fun, I'm going to get into it. And I always am super overwhelmed when I start to look. Do you have an entry level one you would suggest? Yeah,
there's a few entry level ones. I wish I had one to show you, but I've gone way past snooty with my keyboard. But I will say, if you go to drop.com, they have a lot of really good entry-level keyboards, and some of them are really customizable too, but they have one called the Enter key, and that is a really great entry-level board. I think it's $99 or something, and it comes without not a lot of fancy bells and whistles, but it works. And then they've also got the Control and Alt. I really like those ones, and you can swap out the switches, swap out the keycaps, program it, add custom cables and stuff. And then you can go all the way to the opposite end of the spectrum. And there's this one, which is a 3D printed keyboard, and I laser cut the plate myself. And so you can really dive deep.
Oh my gosh. That's amazing. So cool. That is so cool.
Yeah, they're so fun. It's like Legos, but it's practical because you get to actually use it afterwards as a tool. And then they look pretty. And you can just be like, oh, this is a fun thing. It's all nature themed. I've got a little compass on this keyboard.
Oh, that's so cool. I love this one.
Right? I love that one too.
Wow. I never knew how much I loved mechanical keyboards until this moment.
I know. It's a rabbit hole. Watch out.
Yeah.
Yeah, and one thing that I wanted to know more about you, Cassidy, is like you have been doing like lots of live streamings, right? And I know that can be like really taunting, you know, like being in front of people, like recording. And I think you do like for 3 hours, right? And
sometimes,
yeah. What motivates you? Like, how do you handle it? Like, what is your setup? I'm like super curious to know more.
Yeah, well, my setup's a little hacky right now as I try to, unpack the house. But I first started streaming a while ago, actually, with my sister. My sister, she's in tech too. She works at Facebook now. But a few years ago, 3 or 4 years ago, she and I were both working at Amazon. And we were working on Alexa, and we were live streaming, showing developers how to build with Alexa and stuff. And we both really enjoyed it, but then our jobs kind of took us in different directions, and I ended up leaving, she ended up leaving, and she's at Facebook now. And after floating around a bit, I started teaching full-time, and I was teaching coding full-time, so I was teaching workshops all over the place, full-time travel job, and it was very fun. I loved interacting with developers, students, and developers of different experience levels, and had a blast doing that. But then the pandemic happened, and you can't really do a travel job in the pandemic. And so unfortunately my company had to lay off all staff, and that's how I ended up to where I am today. And Netlify has been a great place for me, where they don't mind that I want to live stream and talk with developers all the time. In fact, they encourage it. And so I re-upped my own personal channel and started to, instead of just building Legos and keyboards on occasion on it, but make it a stream where people can chat and also co-work and learn about some coding things and that kind of stuff. And so that's kind of how it came to be, how I started doing that stuff, and how I got comfortable with it.
Is that something that you already like wanted? You were kind of itching for an outlet like that, and then Netlify was just a situation where you could kind of justify the time with work, or was it something that Netlify really wanted and went for?
It was definitely something I wanted to do, where my coworkers on my team, they have some very nice, legit setups. My coworker, Jason Langsdorff, he's got his own show called Learn with Jason that is glorious. If you check it out sometime, it's so impressive, and it's really well produced. And I was like, I don't know if I could ever get to that level, but I would love to stream more regularly, mostly just to interact with developers more, especially in this very remote world. I'm not able to go to meetups or conferences as much anymore, and so maybe I could host my own little community in that way. And so it was something that I said when I joined, this is something I want to do, and they're just like, well, then do it. And I was like, I'm not ready. And so if you look at videos from way back then, my setup has definitely improved over time, and that's always something I tell developers who want to stream but are just like, but I don't have a fancy camera or lighting and stuff. I did not either, but you can start with a little webcam, and it's just figuring out what makes you comfortable, how you want to set it up, and you can always incrementally update over time.
Yeah, it's funny how, like, for everybody in this developer relations world, we all had to like reinvent ourselves, right? Because I feel like before you would go to a conference, you go to a meetup, and then you meet people in person, and to be honest, like nothing replaces that, right?
Yeah.
Like that interaction, you just like, you can bond with people, you have a drink, and it's so nice. But now, okay, you don't have that anymore, so you have to figure out something else. And could be writing posts, could be recording videos. Like, what of those formats do you think are like were the most effective for you? Do you think live streaming is the one that you really love, or do you still like writing posts and still recording videos? watched some of your talks. They're amazing too. You. So yeah.
I appreciate that. I have learned I am not a video editor. You know, I because whenever I'm given the opportunity to speak, I try to do it live every single time, because then if I stumble over my words, it's nothing, I can just move on and get over it. But then if I'm editing it myself, I'm going to take out every single breath that I do that's a little extra. We're like, I said the word like 3 times in this. Let me just go cut that out. And people won't notice, but it's something that I do because I get to edit it. And so I have learned that I should not be near a video editor because I'll just take forever. But I have really enjoyed getting back into writing posts because I kind of didn't get to write as much in my previous roles. And I have really enjoyed doing the live streaming, both because I'm able to provide kind of a space for people, but also it is fun to be able to interact with other developers, find out what they're curious about, and then use that. We have a phrase on my team called use all parts of the buffalo, where try to make a piece of content and then use it to the extreme, where I'll make a demo, I'll do a live stream about it, I'll do a talk about it, I'll do a blog post about it, I'll do another talk about it, I'll run a meetup around it, you know, and try to really use content to its fullest potential. And having a live stream has been a really great avenue for sourcing ideas and material and stuff for making a lot of content.
Oh yeah, because like from those 3 hours you can probably find some snippets too, you can reuse in different places, right? And how would you say, like, today your time is like 50% like developer advocacy and then maybe 50 engineering, or 80-20, 20-80? Like, how do you just organize your time? Because I imagine like there's so many little things that you want to tweak in the product too, but you know.
Yeah, it's hard because it truly varies week by week, where like 2 weeks ago it was 100% engineering. I was coding the entire time. But then this past week I was mostly working on blog posts and kind of making sure some events were prepared and stuff. And then sometimes it's a little bit more 50-50. It really varies from week to week. But yeah, it's nice to kind of have that variety sometimes, because then whenever I do kind of get sick of coding, I can always write a blog post, and then if I'm sick of writing blog posts, I can code a little bit or give a talk, and so there's a nice balance across everything.
Variety, that's great. Are you fully remote now with Netlify?
Yeah, I've been fully remote for about 3 years now. Basically, after I left Amazon, like I mentioned, I think that was 2018 when I left. I've been remote ever since.
How has that experience been, even like pre-pandemic, during pandemic, and then has it changed even as things are changing?
Yeah, it has changed. Working remotely in a pandemic is very different from normal remote work, because before I was able to work in libraries, in cafes, with friends, at a co-working space. I was able to visit friends after work and that kind of stuff. You can't do that in a pandemic when everyone's under lockdown. And I wasn't able to go to my usual spots. And then also our place in Seattle where we were living, it was not huge. And so my husband and I, we had an office that we shared. And typically before, that worked just fine because I was alone in the office. But then in the pandemic, we were both in there. And we would have to coordinate our schedules where if he had a meeting, I had to go up. And then if I had a meeting and stuff, we were in a little townhouse. And so that's when we started to say, we might want to figure this out. And he suddenly was allowed to go fully remote. He's at Microsoft. And once we realized that we were both going to be fully remote, we were just like, well, we need a bigger space. And we kind of want to be closer to family. And I'm originally from Chicago and he's from Philly. And so it kind of made sense. And now that we live in Chicago, I have my own office now. And it's very exciting. And
awesome.
His is next door. We can still wave at each other, in the hallway. But it's really nice to have my own space. And I'm still unpacking it and stuff. But already it's been really, really cool to be able to have this.
What is that like to working from home with a spouse? Is it like more distracting because you can just like hang out or you do, I don't know, do meals together or whatever, or is it even better because it's not like one person has a commute, one person's at home or something, different schedules?
It's really great for someone like me because I'm a bum and my husband loves cooking and stuff. And so typically before, when I was working from home, during the day, like I would eat breakfast, and then he and I would eat dinner together. But during the day, I would just kind of snack on a granola bar and stuff because I was too lazy to make food. But he loves cooking, and so it's been amazing for me because now I'm getting full meals every single day, and it's awesome. But yeah, we admittedly we don't interact a ton during the day unless we are eating some food together, just because he's in a lot of meetings, I'm in a lot of meetings, depending on the time of day. And my team is more Eastern in terms of US and across the water in the UK and stuff. And so my meetings are almost always in the morning, but his team is mostly West Coast. And so his meetings are almost always in the afternoon. So we admittedly don't have a ton of overlap, but it's also nice being in the same place where I can bring him a cup of tea or he'll bring me one and stuff like that during the day.
Yeah, that's nice. What I love the most. My wife also works remotely, and we love like doing those little breaks during the day. So like you just finish a problem, you're done with a task, and then you're like, oh, okay, before I switch contexts, I'm just going to do a little visit over there and talk to her. It's nice. What is your favorite deep dish pizza? Do you like pizza first?
Love pizza. Love so much pizza. Deep dish pizza, it's tough. We've actually gotten... We've done the thing where we get all of the deep dish pizzas that we want to compare at the same time and tried to compare them.
Whoa,
it's
awesome.
It's tough. Yeah, it's tough because they all are good in their own ways. And so the top three in no particular order are Giordano's, Lou Malnati's, and Pequod's. I think Pequod's has the best ratios, Giordano's has the best sauce, and Lou Malnati's has the best crust. If we could make a mega pizza combining all those elements, I feel like that would be the perfect deep dish.
Wow. What a partnership that would be.
Yeah. I'm a big fan of Giordano's. I live in LA. I live in LA, so I shipped from Chicago to LA, and we also bought the popcorn from Chicago. I forgot the name.
Garrett's popcorn?
Yeah,
yes.
Yeah.
So good.
It's amazing. It's delicious.
It's delicious. Yeah, especially like shipping it, it's good. It's good eating it later, but when you get it warm right out of the store,
it's my
gosh, it's amazing.
It's another level.
Yeah,
and you have to wait for it.
Yeah, you do.
Like it's like a 40-minute wait, or at least that's what I remember. So it's like you're probably going hungry, and then you're like super hungry by the time it comes.
It was worth it.
Yeah, just like stuff it in your face.
Yeah, I'm like 5 minutes from a Portillo's now too, and just being able to get the hot dog, the cake, the beef, just oh my gosh, it's dangerous, but it's amazing.
That's nice. Cool. Yeah, one of the things that I know that you're doing right now too is advising polywork, which is almost like a LinkedIn alternative, a much more like modern and much more friendly, I would say, than LinkedIn. How is that going? Like, what do advisors do? I'm curious to know.
That is a great question. Yeah, and so I'm advising 2 startups actually, but one of them is more in stealth. But yeah, with Polywork in particular, they wanted a lot of advice on building the community for engineers on the platform. And so I started advising them last year, I want to say in August or September. And in that time, they did a full platform rewrite at one point. They went through a lot of different changes, but what was cool about it is because they're so early in their life, I was able to really help them prioritize which things they should build first. And the thing that I'm probably the most proud of that I worked on with them was the contacting feature. And so when you reach out to someone, you can specify what you're open to talking about. And so on LinkedIn, you can just get cold DMs about anything. But with Polywork, you can specify, okay, I'm open to contracting and I'm open to speaking on podcasts, or I'm open to side projects and I'm open to mentorship, things like that. And so you can specify what you're open to talking about. And then let's just say someone spams you, they harass you, they do something like that. You can instantly block them and it reports it to the admins of the site, the community moderators and everything. And if someone is doing that to a ton of people, they have a policy both for off-site harassment but also on-site harassment. They'll block you from the platform completely. And it's really great, and I'm super glad that they prioritize that first, and it's such a game changer compared to a lot of other social platforms.
Oh yeah, like if you look at LinkedIn, you know, that's what you get the most, right? Like constant spam, and even if you report, nothing happens, and then they keep doing that to other people. So you just create this environment that simply doesn't work, right? It's everybody trying to reach out to you, and you want to be open, obviously, you know, you want to have an open channel with people, but at the same time you have all these other players that are not necessarily doing the right thing. Also, I love how like you're thinking about targeting engineers first. Like if I looking back at the success of Clubhouse, right? I don't know if they are that successful right now, but in the early days,
they're doing well enough.
Yeah, they really focus on like those founders and entrepreneurs, like that kind of audience. So I feel like if you nail down a niche like engineers at first, then if it catches with them, then it's so easy to grow to another audience, right?
Yeah. And so I've been advising them on the engineering part, and they have a couple other advisors as well. And then they have also a few advisors for the design community as well, and then also for the music community as well. And so we all kind of have our focuses on what we want out of the platform, and then they're able to serve those communities well, and they're just different enough too where we can kind of find overlaps and make it a more broad product for a lot of people.
What does that look like? I mean, do you get into the details of the code? Are you advising on that level, or almost more like a project or a product management perspective of, like you said, priorities and features and that kind of thing?
Yeah, and so it varies from company to company, where some companies, when you advise them, they'll be just like, okay, yeah, please look at the code, or we're thinking about using this tech stack or something. With Polywork in particular, I meet with them semi-regularly, and they just come with a slide deck of, here's the things working, here's what is being prioritized, here's what's in the next sprint, and then I can say, okay, I love this, not a huge fan of that, and then and it's mostly from like a product perspective. And then sometimes as they make certain changes and stuff, I can say, okay, I know technically speaking that's difficult, but this is going to be a game changer, so what can we do to move things around?
That's really cool.
Yeah, it's been a fun experience. I hope to do more advising in the future, and it's something that I kind of stumbled upon, where someone I was chatting with at a meetup or something, they were talking about advising startups, and I was like, how do you even get into that? And then Polywork asked if I might help them just answer some questions, and I was like, I'm interested in advisory work, and it kind of just turned into this, and so hopefully more of that can happen in the future.
Yeah, and I feel like there's so many cool things about being an advisor, because like maybe like one single decision that you make, like one little thing, it can completely change the trajectory of that product, right? So having that ability is like super empowering.
Yeah, it's really fun, and it's like not too time consuming, where you can still help a team and stuff, but you can also do your full-time job, or you can also tend to your other commitments and everything. And so it's a great way to be able to help a company without being on them all the time.
Yeah, totally. That's cool.
One thing I'm always curious about for people that are like you, that are successful, have done multiple roles, multiple companies, there's two kind of gradients that I'm curious where you would put yourself on, and then also just what's your relationship with these kind of labels. So you have specialists versus generalists, and then you have like an individual contributor versus manager, leader, prioritizer, that kind of thing. So where would you put yourself like right now? And then do you have any, like, is there any visceral like experience you've had with trying to be one or the other, or missing one or the other?
Yeah. And so in terms of generalist and specialist, I'd say I'm kind of a specialist in that, like, the tech stack that I used is pretty specialized. Like I'm deep in the React world. That's what I taught full time. I've been using React since 2014, and I think React came out in 2013, so I've been using it for a really long time. That being said, I'm open to other technologies and I use other technologies as needed. So kind of specialized, but generalist in how I use that tech stack, where, again, there's live streaming, there's podcasts, there's events, there's actually coding, there's demos, product work, that kind of stuff. On the IC versus manager side, I'm currently doing both, where I'm a director of developer experience now, and a couple people report to me, and so I do the people management side of stuff, and I've done people management before. I have managed teams of, I think, up to 6 developers, and then as small as 2 at a few different roles. And I do like that aspect of it because I like being able to get resources for people so that way they can do their jobs well. But I also really like coding. And so I kind of flip-flop between the IC and the manager role pretty regularly throughout my career, just because it's really fun to work with the people on this kind of stuff. But when you are in that kind of role, it tends to be a lot more meetings and a lot less heads down getting the work done and stuff. And I like doing that heads down work a lot.
Yeah, it's cool that you can find a place where you can fulfill those needs, like at your job, right? Like for lots of folks, like if they end up going that management route, I can tell for myself, that's what happened with me. Like at some point you're like, just your full day is all meetings. And then if you're like a creative person, you still want to have that creative outlet and you simply can't find it. So what you do, you create side projects, you like work during the weekend, and then that's the recipe for burnout. So it's
Been
tough.
There.
Yeah, I looked at your code pen, and by just looking at your pure CSS experiments, I can tell you love coding. And what is your favorite one? I saw the Game Boy, which is awesome. The ping pong,
did like the Game Boy.
Unbelievable. Do you have a favorite one?
I'm going to pull up my code pen right now and see if I can decide, because man, it's kind of hard to decide sometimes, because they all are definitely made at different times and were different levels of effort and stuff. And so I have a bunch of code pens that are actually private that are just really useful to me, and they're really ugly, but it's like, oh, I made this little tool that I can throw together in CodePen. But I think my CSS camera might be my favorite one. Because with that CSS camera, that one I had to do a lot of little hacks to get the lens just right with CSS gradients and getting the flash just right with
I love
with
that flash
gradient as well. That one was challenging to make, but it was really, really fun.
That's super awesome. Do you still do those experiments nowadays, or just like something that it's in the past?
I still sometimes. I used to do them really regularly. Like I actually had an event on my calendar, like CodePen Thursdays. Every Thursday I would spend an hour just making a CodePen, and it really, honestly, just doing little funny experiments like that, it really improved my CSS skills a ton.
Awesome.
And so I would go on to Dribble, find a design that I could try to recreate and do that. And so I don't have that calendar event anymore, but sometimes if I get the itch, or I'm just like, I wonder if I could make that, I'll throw a CodePen together.
That's super awesome.
Yeah, that's a nice exercise, right? Like outlet / just like work that muscle more and more and actually build real skills from it, right?
Yeah, it's really fun. I don't know if either of you have heard of the game Code in the Dark.
Oh yeah,
Yeah, and so if you haven't, what it happens is you can do this on CodePen or with something else. I like doing it on CodePen, and you hide the preview, like the browser preview, so you can only see the code panels. And then someone, whether you're in a room with someone or virtually, they give you a screenshot of a website, and you have 15 minutes to try to recreate that website with just HTML, CSS, JavaScript, and you can't preview your code.
Wow.
It is chaotic. But it is super fun to just be like, okay, I'm pretty sure if I had a border radius on this, and just like figuring out the layout in your head as you make it. I've actually done that on my live stream, and it's so fun because then people in the chat will share their code pens, and some you're just like, oh, I can see where you're going, and some you're just like, you missed a class, didn't you? and it's a really, really fun game to play with people, and that's a really fun one to do on CodePen as well.
have you played that live with other people too? Like as a competition sort of thing?
It's so fun. I did that at work once, and I remember it was the most satisfying thing because our tech lead was in, and he was just like, I'm going to crush all of you. And he had been writing in React for so long, he forgot that it was class equals and not class name equals.
Oh,
and
no.
so none of his CSS worked because he did class name on everything. And we're all just like, oh! And it was awesome. But yeah, I love doing that with people because especially when you display it, sometimes you're just like, oh, no, you tried. And then sometimes you're just like, how did you do that? It's a really fun time.
Oh, the first time I saw that, Johnny, was like I went to this conference in Sweden, and they have like this after party, and then everybody went there, and then they selected like 5 people to play. They turned off the lights, and then they only had like the screenshots, and then they have a clock, and then you start. So it's like huge pressure, lots of people watching. Word. It's insane. It's so crazy.
It's so fun.
That sounds like a lot of adrenaline.
Oh, it is. The entire time you're just like, how much time? I have 2 minutes to make rounded circles and stuff like that.
And you can't see anything, so it's like insane, you know?
You're truly painting it in your brain and hoping that it comes out.
Oh man, that sounds so fun. Speaking of fun things, I heard that you are a musician.
Yeah.
Yeah, can you share what you play and?
So I'm an instrument hoarder. That's my biggest problem. But my husband and I, pre-pandemic, we were in the Seattle Video Game Orchestra, and so we would play music around Seattle at conventions and stuff, like Zelda music, Skyrim music, that kind of stuff. It was really fun. And for that group, I was on trumpet and he was on violin. But we play other things too. I'm so excited because in this house we're going to have room for a real piano, and so we're shopping for a real piano. And he majored in piano performance before going into tech. And so we've got that. I also play euphonium, which is kind of like a mini tuba. I really love playing that one. Also in Seattle, it was a very Seattle thing. It was kind of weird, but it was fun. I was in an electric guitar band. So it was just electric guitars, no other instruments, no drums or anything, just electric guitars.
How many?
12?
What?
No way.
It was very fun. Again, it's a very Seattle thing. Like you won't find that in many other cities.
My word.
But it was a blast of whenever we did concerts, people would come out being like, it was like electric guitars in space. I was just transported somewhere, but I don't know where. It was a blast being a part of that group. And so I play electrical guitar, and I'm trained classically, so I play classical guitar as well. And then my husband also plays bass and acoustic guitar. We've got a melodica. I play ukulele. We have so many instruments in this house. It's very fun.
That's incredible. So you probably haven't had much of an outlet for that during the pandemic. I
have not. Yeah, I'm actually very worried because I'm finally going to have the space to play a trumpet again now that I'm not in an apartment, and I know that my range is shot. I will not be able to play high notes at all, but I'm really looking forward to it, especially once we do get a piano. We're talking about duets we might want to play and stuff.
That's so cool.
It's amazing. And do you have like any like parallels between like learning how to play an instrument and like learning how to code? Does one help with the other? I don't know.
I do think it does help. I can't really explain it, but it does feel like it's a very logical thing. And I've been playing music since I was pretty little, and so it's kind of a second nature thing for me to read music and everything. But there is a logic to music that comes out in an artistic form, and I think it's very similar with code, where sometimes the code you write, it's not just logic, but it's really beautifully done and executes in a really good way, and I think that there are a lot of parallels there.
Yeah,
and I think that's really illustrated in the fact that a lot of developers are musicians.
That's true.
Yeah, I mean, music theory is like very like mathematical. I mean, it's like objective, and it's all theory, like everything is accounted for, you know, in a cool way. But then you express that, like you said, in a very subjective way, you know, like the way you play each note. If you were to talk to a conductor or instrumentalist, it's like it's not objective. I mean, it's very much varies by the person and expression and everything. So that's a cool comparison.
It's kind of like how certain coding environments and stuff give you the guardrails that you need to like not do too many bugs or execute certain things. But then with music, you are given the notes, you know how you should play certain things, but then you can kind of figure out where your boundaries are with the notes that you play.
That's so cool. Yeah. Well, one thing that I really enjoy, like just looking at your Twitter feed and like consuming your content, is how you can always like inject those personality traits in everything that you do, you know, either if it's music or whatever you're enjoying at that time. And one thing that I noticed is how like just talks in general, people are very much like serious about what they do, right? They have like this really serious talks, and they're approaching it as if you are doing this important meeting, or you have to behave in a certain way. You can't like go out of that. And one of your talks that I completely love it, I actually have the title here, it's called An Incredible Serious Discussion about Next.js. And it's so nice. Like you spend like the first minute and it's like very sad, and there's like this sad song in the background, and then you just like go and start making it super fun. Like how did you find that tone, you know? Because I feel like it's so hard to like figure out first, like putting yourself out there, you know, show your personality, but also inject that kind of like fun attitude in what you're doing. How was that process?
You know, practice makes perfect, and it's really something that I did develop over time. Like I've always kind of been a goofball, and so it was inevitable that something like that would happen. But with a lot of the talks that I've given, if you were to talk to high school Cassidy, she would be just like, "You do what for a living?" Like she would not believe you that I public speak for a living. But it's something where I kind of got a little bit more comfortable with it relatively early in my career, just because I was really thrown into the deep end. Where at first, when I was in college, I was starting to give talks to middle schoolers and high schoolers to be just like, tech is great, it's super fun, look at all the things you can do. And then when I went into my first job and I was starting to give talks, I still wanted people to be excited about it, but it was a completely different audience. And so I had to kind of, okay, let me figure out how to get the information across, but it's so fun and exciting and you can do it too. And then kind of slowly but surely, as I got more comfortable with the concept of I want it to be fun and exciting and you can do it too, but I also need to convey the technical part. That's kind of how I try to, that's the narrative I try to drive in every single talk that I do.
That's so cool.
It's hard to balance. I'm like,
it is.
I've only given a few talks, but I always take myself too seriously. Like I always veer towards, okay, I know that they want to hear like really good content. I can't mess up any technical details, anything like that. So then you just go head first into like super serious. So how do you like, was it just practice that you kind of found your own voice and that balance?
Yeah, it truly was practice, because I can think about the talks right now off the top of my head where I went the more serious route, like, okay, I need to make sure I'm very serious about this and everything. Those talks I was the most nervous for. But the talks where I did approach it and like, this is going to be fun, I just want them to have fun and hopefully learn something, that doing that helps me so much as a speaker, but then also the audience has a fun time too. Because every single conference you go to, there's going to be many serious talks like, all right, here is how we scaled our service to millions of users. Like, you will always see those talks. But the ones that you remember are the ones that are fun. Like, there's a conference that I went to 2 years ago at Dinosaur.js where there were a lot of great talks during that event, but the one that always sticks out in my mind, the gal who was given the talk she was pretending to be on the set of Jurassic Park, and she was just like, okay, what went wrong? And then the entire talk was talking about the debugging processes they should have had at Jurassic Park. And it was all about debugging.
Wow.
It was hilarious and so well done. And I remember that talk because it was fun. And so I try to be that fun talk whenever I can, because I know that information is going to stick around.
I feel like it's so hard to do a regular talk, like a serious tone talk, and you add that extra layer of fun, and then now you have to think about the storytelling and everything. But at the end of the day, right, if you're giving a talk, if you said, yes, I'm going, you want to be heard, you know, you want to pass a message, you want to convey a certain point. But like if you do that in a way that people just simply don't engage, then it was all for nothing, right? So it's better to like, okay, let me go that extra mile, let me think about the storytelling, something that is engaging, you know, something that fits the theme of the conference, you know. Awesome. That's even better, right?
Yeah. Well, and people go to conferences not to learn everything about a topic, but to learn about what they should learn about a topic. Because you simply can't convey all of why Rust is important in one talk, for example. But you could learn the highlights, and you could be just like, okay, now that I have these highlights points, I can go take a class, or I can go research it on my own. And so I think that's another aspect of talks where when I started to realize I just need to convey these specific points, that way people can research on their own, that also made the talks a lot less pressure, where I don't have to make sure they get all of the specific important ways of why communities are important in tech. I can say, these are the main points that you need to know. Let's have fun with it, and hopefully you'll remember those main points.
How is that same kind of dilemma? Because I know you do a lot of like TikTok videos, and not all of them are technical, but those are even super time boxed, right? I don't know the length, the max length of a TikTok. You probably know.
You can either do 15 seconds or 60 seconds.
Okay, so yeah, 60 seconds to convey anything technical is like really difficult. So how do you do that, you know, in that small of a format as well?
I love being restricted to that kind of format, because then you are forced to be very creative with it. And so, like, for example, I need to add more to it, but I run the Netlify TikTok, and on that one, I'm just like, okay, we have so many features that people don't know about. Like there's snippet injection, and there's redirects. There's all kinds of different things that you can host on Netlify and stuff. People have no idea. What if I just say, hey, did you know that you can add a redirect in less than 5 seconds in one line of code? Here. And then I just do it, and then that's it. And it's so fast and consumable that people don't feel like they need to read a 300-word blog post. They can just see it and be done with it. And it's the same with a lot of my own personal ones. I'm often just conveying jokes, but I try to make it like a funny tech joke of some kind, and bring out kind of the common issues that we as developers often run into. And a lot of times it's just like, you know, every developer has hit some kind of CORS error in their life. Nobody likes CORS. What is a way where I can convey that like, oh, this is going to be the thing that sticks with you forever? It's going to be CORS. I'll throw that in. And so I kind of try to keep, whenever I run into something or someone asks me for help on a bug and stuff, I'm just like, that could be a joke someday. And sometimes it's truly just a post-it where I'll write it down, and I'll be just like, oh, I'll figure out how I want to throw this together at some point.
That's so awesome. It's crazy how limitations is what actually allows you to like be creative, right? Like if you had this huge canvas that you could do anything, you probably wouldn't do it, like none of it, because you're like, oh, what do I do now? Like there's so many different things. That's why Twitter is so fascinating. That's why, like Instagram too, like in the beginning you were forced to do like squared photos, and now then they start opening up. But it's interesting, and I imagine it's like very different the way you approach TikTok from a personal perspective, from a company perspective, right? Like it's hard to find company feeds. Not that hard, but like technology company feeds. Oh, that's tough, right?
Right. Yeah, and kind of like what you said. I think when you're forced to be creative because you have restrictions, that's when you see the most creativity. And I often think about when I was in middle school, we had a couple art teachers, and there was one art teacher that let you draw anything you want, and then one that always had rules. I had the one that always had rules, but I was able to draw such fun things in my middle school brain, where she was just like, okay, you're gonna draw fish that aren't supposed to be doing what they're doing, and then the drawings that came out of that, where I think I had fish gambling in the back room of some restaurant, and like people had like fish playing basketball. It's silly stuff, but you get to see really fun creative stories out of that. That's a silly example, but I think it's something that you can apply that to so many different things. And even, for example, on my team at work, we recently were just like, okay, what if we tried to build something with the Shopify API, but we all chose our own framework that we wanted to do with it. We each get these serverless functions. Let's see what we can do. And it was really interesting to see how we all came up with sites that looked about the same, because it was the same functions and the same like styles. But the way we built them and the way they were structured were super, super different. And so it was interesting to see how things could be structured with different frameworks.
It almost reminds me of like a hackathon, right? Even just that concept of being restricted by time or by prompt, okay, you have to build like this feature, and it's really incredible what can come out of a really small amount of time. You're like, hey, that's been on the roadmap for years, and we always thought we didn't have enough time, but yet we pumped it out in like one day. We just got the right minds together with the right direction and restrictions and everything. So yeah, it's pretty powerful.
Yeah, it really is. That happened at our own company hackathons. Like we've shipped so many little features just because we were given a full day of you can just work on whatever you want, and we were able to get these features out the door. And I know that's a common story at so many different companies. And I think allowing people to be creative with those kinds of restrictions really helps you learn better and ship more.
I'm just thinking now even what that looks like for managers. I've never thought of it that way, but I wonder if that's an important part of like delegation too, is not restricting for the sake of restricting, but we probably just call it focus, right? Like, oh, we want to provide focus, but it's kind of the same thing, right? You're trying to remove enough of the things that would give too much decision or provide distractions or whatever, and say, hey, we want you to like go all the way into this. And that's kind of an important role for leaders and managers that are dictating priorities for other people, right?
Yeah, well, and I think just setting boundaries in general. Boundaries are life's mute button, and it really helps you stop from burning out and stuff. And so setting boundaries on just the relationship with the people that you have that you're mentoring or managing or a part of your community, I think that's so important, because you can have really, really healthy relationships if you set boundaries in your personal life and in your professional life. And I think when you have those as a manager, it not only lets you be creative and have a good working relationship, but it kind of keeps you from getting too anxious about all the things that you have to do.
Even like if you think about it, like job titles, why do we have those in the first place? Like we could all just be like hanging out and just like doing our own thing.
Worker.
And I imagine,
director of worker.
I imagine you'll be able to do like some amazing stuff, right? But the reason why we have those is then because like you can be doing your, like, let's say as you're doing your live stream, but then you don't have to think about the support tickets that are coming in, or like, are we hitting the sales numbers? You can just focus on what you're doing. And obviously you can definitely check those out and be interested about them, but that there are people that are handling that. So we have all these sorts of abstraction layers to help us focus at work. But as a manager, you have to be always like thinking, okay, what else can I do? How can I unblock the team and stuff like that?
Yeah.
Okay, so Johnny, I think it's time for our last question, right?
Yes. So we ask the same question every week. I'm really curious to see what Cassidy says, actually. So, what is one thing that's on your desk? It could be like software on your computer. It's technically somewhere around your desk. Or it could be something physical, like a keyboard, maybe, that you are like loving right now. It's making you more productive. It makes you excited to come to your desk, anything like that.
Well, I did show you all of my keyboards already. And honestly, the rest of my desk isn't set up. So I guess we're talking about keyboards again.
Yes.
Yeah, I love my mechanical keyboards. What is particularly fun is whenever I switch between keyboards, because it's just a slightly different experience typing, because I have different switches on all the different keyboards and stuff, it kind of just makes what I'm doing a bit more fun, where I'm just like, ooh, this blog post is kind of fun to write because it has clicky switches. Or this one is particularly fun for coding because I have these symbols as a hotkey and stuff like that. And so I admit the answer was definitely going to be keyboards no matter what. It's pretty fun having a variety of them.
That's awesome.
Great.
Yeah, this was great, Cassidy. Thank you so much for coming. And yeah, I hope you had a good time too.
Yeah, thank you for having me. This was fun.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the ByteTalk podcast. You can subscribe to be notified of our weekly episodes. And of course, if you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to like, comment, and share with your friends. See you next week.